Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Challenge. And if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. It is now 9:08 p.m. in Central Europe, and it's already kind of winter's pretty much here. Time to curl up by a log in the fire, and accept that you're not going to see too much sun for the next 6 months. So it's very, very dismal, as I firmly predicted it would be. However, the good news is we have Gagglers joining us on our live stream. So thank you very much, everybody who is here. We have a few things to talk about. One thing that obviously is we can talk about, and it's it's very shocking and horrific as these attacks in Lebanon and in Syria, first using the beepers and then the walkie-talkies. What's really stunning about this is, first of all, the wanton recklessness of Israel. And secondly, of course, is the Israel enablers' eagerness to justify Israel's actions and to celebrate it. That this was some wonderful, brilliant, ingenious technological triumph whereby Israel took out the leaders of Hamas. Now, as we've seen, and it should have been obvious from the start, that when you target these beepers, you have no idea whom you are targeting. So the notion that somehow, these beepers were in the hands of Hezbollah, and so therefore we were just targeting Hezbollah, is of course nonsensical, because you don't know that. You don't know who, even if you've established that the order for them was but filled out by Hezbollah, and that it was its use was exclusively to be for that of Hezbollah. You don't know in whose hands they were. You don't know, somebody may have lent it out to someone. But above all, you don't know in what and where any individual Hezbollah figure would be at the time that these beepers were set off. Because for all you know, they might be on a plane right now, right on a plane, sitting on a plane, and therefore you would cause an explosion inside a plane, and of course you would kill everybody on board the plane, but of course you'd also kill everybody who would be underneath the plane when it crashed. You don't know whether anybody's sitting there having dinner with their family. You don't know that they're not sitting in a train, on a bus. There are all sorts of innocent bystanders who are going to be hurt through these explosions. So the very idea that these ridiculous American champions of Israel go around defending and justifying, and more than that, celebrating this great triumph, when we already know that children were killed as a result. We already know that, so we don't even have to hypothesize. So children were killed as a result of these explosions, and was always going to happen. It just shows the a kind of moral depravity that we're dealing with here. And you had to have known that. You had to have known that when if you're going to set these these pages off, you don't know where anybody is at any particular time. I mean, you could be inside a school, inside a hospital, at that moment. Israel has no idea. And then, of course, then you kill all of the bystanders, or just seriously injured bystanders, which itself is something that's a serious matter, because when people are seriously injured, they sustain life-altering injuries, losing limbs, permanent scars, and so on. So all this was entirely foreseeable by Israel. And Israel nonetheless went ahead with this. And it's hard to see exactly what the ultimate objective here is. I mean, presumably the goal is, this will demoralize Hezbollah, and as a result, Hezbollah will cease to be a problem for us. But that all seems to be very questionable, because while I do agree that this was a blow to Hezbollah's reputation, because Hezbollah, was known for its extreme secrecy, for its rigid adherence to the highest security protocols. That it was almost impossible to break through the security barriers of Hezbollah. That's what we were led to think, and Israel did this. And then it's the part that is ingenious is not the setting off these bombs, but that they obviously had penetrated Hezbollah thoroughly. They knew all about these orders for the pages. They knew the supply line, who would produce them, how they would travel, how they would be distributed, how they would obviously get to Lebanon. All that was clearly known by Israel. And then they figured out at what stage in that distribution process they would insert these explosive devices. So you'd have to say, yeah, Israel pulled this off. It's there's nothing to admire, but yeah, they did this. And that Hezbollah has suffered a blow to its reputation. Now, here at the Gaggle, or at least I've always been very wary of rushing in and declaring that the multipolarity is already here. This is the best of all multipolar worlds, and that Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, China, they're already in different axes. They've already created their own world, and the West is being increasingly sidelined. Well, of course, it's not true. Hezbollah did not win that war in 2006. Hezbollah was always much weaker than Israel, contrary to the nonsense peddled by Moon of Alabama and by others. Hezbollah is going to do this. Hezbollah kicked Israel's ass. Hezbollah is going to defeat. Scott read also, Hezbollah is going to defeat Israel. Israel cannot hope to win a war against Hezbollah. This is nonsense. However, I did think that Hezbollah was a little bit better than this. I didn't think that Israel would succeed in penetrating their network as thoroughly as it had. Uh, and again, this, we've talked in the past about Iran, and I said the same thing about Iran. I mean, these are massive security lapses on the part of the Iranians that Israel has been able to exploit. So how they managed to kill these scientists, sabotage Iran's nuclear program, how they were able to commit terrorist acts in Tehran. All this was kind of lamentable. And again, I mean, Israel has a lot going for it. I mean, it's got the United States in its corner. The United States provides, obviously, a lot of highly sophisticated technology and resources and so on. So there's no question Israel is coming in with many advantages. That's, I think, different from declaring that Iran has already joined the ranks of the great powers, or that multipolarity is already here. Well, we're not there, and so it was absurd. So now, again, that's a separate issue from the sheer absolute immorality and barbarity of Israel's actions. They knew perfectly well the thousands of innocents would be killed. I mean, I find it hilarious that somehow Israel's champions are claiming that the only people who have been injured are Hezbollah people. Amazing. How do they know that? How can you know that the thousands of people who have been injured, they're only Hezbollah people? They don't know that. It's just simply they just made this up. It's a good soundbite when you come on the TV shows and say, "Oh yeah, the only people who have been injured are people who are actually working for Hezbollah." Well, do you know that? We already know children have been killed. We know that's not even in dispute. So with these, that 9-year-old girl, was she also working for Hezbollah? So this is but nonsense. But it just shows the sheer dishonesty and depravity of Israel's champions. And you see also what's so disgusting about Israel is its lack of any respect for anyone else other than Israelis. Only Jewish blood is being spilled. It matters. No one else. No one else's lives matter. No one else's security matters. No one else's families matter. No one else's children matter. No one else's poisoned food and wells and everything else. None of that matters. Soil. None of that matters. Only Israel matters. And then all these seals here in the United States would then just say, "Oh, Israel has every right to do whatever it can for its security." Does it? Does Israel have every right? Does everyone have a right to go around destroying their neighbors, doing whatever they want to their neighbors, because their security is under threat? Well, obviously not. So that's this amazing sight that we have this totally barbaric act. And can you imagine if it were the other way around? Can you imagine if Iran had somehow managed to insert explosive devices into pages, Israeli pages, and look what happened. A lot of Israelis were suddenly killed or badly injured. Can you imagine the hysteria that would engulf Israel? and the hysteria that would engulf the United States, the hysteria that would engulf Europe, if that were to happen. My God, Jewish blood is being spilled. Then, as like we still hear constantly about October the 7th, all the people were killed October 7th, even though we know that many of the people killed, maybe even most of the people killed, were killed by Israelis who just rushed in, panic-stricken state, and sent in their helicopter gunships and then started killing at random, and so they killed many Israelis, all of which are then attributed to Hamas. So therefore that's the example that if this were the other way around, if somehow Israelis had been the victims of bombs implanted into pages, and were then just simply set off without any concern about the innocent bystanders and families and everything else, then that would be that. Now, one also has to remember that the Americans are very much in on this. Now, did they know ahead of time? We don't know. I mean, they can play all these little games about plausible deniability. The Americans make sure that they are not informed ahead of time about what Israel does, because then, of course, America is on the hook. So Israel can do these actions, kill Iranian generals in the consulate, carry out assassinations in Iran, and the Americans never know what's going on. Amazing. They never know. I mean, they got the greatest intelligence service in the world. I mean, or at least the one that's the most lavishly funded intelligence service in the world. But the Americans never seem to know what Israel is about to do. And the amazing thing is that the Americans never want to know. However, they're always on the hook for Israeli actions. So Americans apparently didn't know that Israel was about to attack the Iranian consulate in Damascus and kill the generals in Damascus. So when this happens, and the Iranians were obviously upset, and then Iran had to do something to respond, but Iran, obviously is very timid, let the Americans know ahead of time what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, in order to help the Americans to fight off these launched missiles. So America was basically now involved in this war against Iran, sort of war against Iran, on behalf of Israel, as a result of an action that was perpetrated by Israel, as a result of an action that apparently, according to the official story, the Americans had no knowledge of before it happened. Now, that's not a good deal for the American people, you would think, because then you think, well, okay, that if Israel does these things without American approval, without even American knowledge, and then that's likely to trigger retaliation. But when it comes to said retaliation, the Americans are ready and to fight off, ward off Israel's enemies, then essentially the Americans are on the hook for actions that they themselves have no control over. The Americans said, now that is a bad deal for any country, that you're being dragged into a war over things that you have no control over, things that were, or at least things that in theory you should have control over, but you have voluntarily decided not to have control over. So in fact, because of course, the United States could absolutely control Israel's actions. Very, very easy. You just pick up a phone and tell BB or whoever is at the other end of the line, that there'll be no more um, resources going your way if you continue with this conduct. Moreover, any retaliation that your actions trigger, you're going to have to deal with them yourself. We're not going to help you. So if Iran decides to hit you, we're not going to be there to help you out. You're going to have to deal with Iran on your own. But of course, no American leader does that. And so, again, the American people are on the hook for the actions of a regime that the American taxpayers bankroll, that American taxpayers have no control over, and have no idea what it might do next. And the Americans seem to think that when they make these statements after the fact, well, we didn't know anything. No one told us. Yeah, we're just as much in the dark as you are. We're trying to find out what happened. Imagine that. We're trying to find out. They turn on CNN, and they're watching the telly, and they think, wow, whew, this is bad. I wonder what happened. We need to get to the bottom of this. So they pretend that they have no control over these events. But the one thing they do have control over, and which they immediately declare, is that, well, should Iran or Hezbollah or anyone retaliate against Israel, we will, of course, have Israel's back. So we didn't know anything. But, if Hezbollah retaliates, then we will be there to fight alongside Israel. Now, that's, as I say, that's not a good deal for the American people, but that's the thinking of the American policymaking elite, and who are celebrating about Israel's extraordinary technological wizardry in pulling this thing off. Now, the whole idea of still saying this is really amazing. It's such a fantastic accomplishment. Well, how is this an accomplishment if you've killed or seriously injured innocent people? Those who are defending Israel today have absolutely no basis for saying that the only people who were either killed or injured were Hezbollah fighters. They have no basis for saying that. How the hell do you know that? How do you know who was where at 3:30 p.m. local time? You don't know. It may have been, obviously we're in a marketplace, so there were, again, a lot of innocent people in the marketplace, having dinner with your family, on a train, on a bus, even in a car, in the middle of the traffic. So if there's an explosion in the middle of the traffic, then everybody else who's in the traffic is going to be injured as a result. I mean, car crashes taking place as well. So the idea, this is fairly obvious stuff, and the idea that these Israel's champions are not able to see how reckless this was, it just shows the depravity of this Israel über alles movement in the United States. And one should also have to extend this to Europe, because I may be wrong, and again, people may correct me, but I haven't seen too much condemnation of what Israel did from anyone in Europe. I haven't heard anything from Annalena Baerbock. I haven't heard anything from Keir Starmer. I haven't heard anything from Emmanuel Macron. I mean, don't they have anything to say about this action so reckless? And then if anyone does say anything, it's invariably along the lines of, well, we need to avoid escalation. I think both sides need to step back. Both sides. I mean, Israel had done this. Both sides need to step back. So, apart from anything else, it's also a very cowardly act. And Israel is a very cowardly kind of a country, because you're attacking primarily civilians for all the time. I mean, let's say in terms of how many were killed. So one has to assume that the thousands, we don't know how many thousands, but there are clearly thousands who have been injured. Most of the people who are injured have to be just innocent civilians. So this is what Israel does. Israel is very good at essentially destroying largely civilian forces, and not particularly good at a serious combat, but pretty good at just hitting civilian targets. And again, this was it was really classic Israel, and then of course it does the usual thing of neither confirming nor denying. Well, if you're so pleased with what you did, if this is such an ingenious, as Ben Shapiro has pointed out, this is such a wonderful, ingenious, technologically brilliant action. Why not tell them? Yeah, we did it. Yep. And we're very pleased with what we did. We killed Hezbollah. We killed all these Hezbollah. You never say this. So, yeah, I mean, therefore, this is what Israel is. But as I say, I mean, the one good thing maybe will be if people get a certain sense, get a dose of reality. People got to get themselves, wean themselves off from listening to Scott Ritter. This become it's something that's bad for the brain. So to go on listening to Scott Ritter, who have been telling them that how fantastically powerful Hezbollah is, and that Hezbollah will, of course, easily defeat Israel in any war. Hezbollah is invincible, and so on. I mean, obviously, it's not. I mean, this was a total, absolutely devastating penetration of its network. This. I don't think, and to be fair, Nasrallah and the Hezbollah leadership have not themselves made any of these claims that, we're going to basically defeat Israel. I mean, they've basically been very shrewd in avoiding all-out conflict with Israel, as has Iran. So this whole thing is really just a fantasy created in the alt media, Ritter, Moon of Alabama, all the names, they're who've been essentially pulling this hoax on us for years. And what should be realistic? I mean, whatever one's feelings. I mean, obviously, we know what we think about how how this Israel is carrying out its wars, its permanent wars against its neighbors. But one should also be realistic, and not start living in fantasy land about how Israel is going to be crushed. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the comments and made Gagglers in the on our locals board. Always good. So, okay. So, Danaki, always good to see you. He says, Kedvesh George, dear George, the special needs operation is a roaring success. The massive weapons arsenal in Tver is no more. Await. Yeah, I mean, it's another thing which we always have to talk about somewhat realistically. This attack on this massive weapons. I mean, this was the scale of this attack was quite staggering. Apparently, Ukraine did this. This is a weapons depot, missiles, armor, ammunition, shells. It was obviously a very big depot of Russian weaponry that was taken out by Ukraine. And it seems like Ukraine did it using drones. So that, of course, raises the question of how adequate, again, Russian protection of its armory is. I mean, you don't expect missiles and shells and all kinds of heavy armor being destroyed by drones. I mean, you would expect, if you have a weapons depot, that it would be absolutely locked down and prevented from getting destroyed. You got to basically keep it there and absolutely firmly entrenched so that it cannot be destroyed by anything short of nuclear weapons. Yet this was a case of an attack via drones. Now, with drones, they don't carry such a huge payload. So therefore, that raises the question of how adequate was Russia's protection of its missiles and its of its artillery shells. So this was a really quite lamentable. And as always, you have to think that as we were talking about the Americans, this is Russian taxpayer money. Again, like American taxpayers, the Russian taxpayers make great sacrifices. They prefer to keep their money to themselves. Nonetheless, they hand over their money to their government in the expectation that the government will provide them with security and at a minimum will protect the investments. They're having built these missiles, having built the shells and armor and everything else, that they would then provide adequate protection for it, and that this weaponry cannot just be taken out by drones. But evidently they were, and the scale of the explosion was enormous. I mean, it was almost like an earthquake. That huge was the explosion as a result of this Ukrainian drone attack, and of course it caused massive fires and everything else. So that's billions of rubles, Russian taxpayer rubles, gone up in smoke. And again, you think, well, this is really appalling. I mean, again, if this was the United States, we would naturally be saying, hey, the American people have paid a lot of money for this weaponry, and they would expect these weapons to be kept out of harm's way, or at least not be destroyed by drones. If you destroyed it, you attack, using tactical nuclear weapons. Okay, well, all right, well. these sites were hardened, as hardened as they could be, but nonetheless, thanks to the thanks to the fact that it was a nuclear weapon that was launched. Okay, we couldn't harden the site adequately to survive a nuclear attack, but drones. So if you took it out by drones, I mean, first of all, this was a weapons depot, and again, the Americans want to assume it was the Americans. The Americans had obviously identified it. They identified that this is a big weapons depot, so they provided this information to the Ukrainians, and then of course the Americans had guided these drones. But the fact that the drones were able to affect this kind of a destruction, then you'd have to then think, okay, well, these missiles were maybe they were just lying around, just simply there. You put some tarpaulin cover over them, and that was that. So, it's a real question that again that what Russia tolerates and what Russian taxpayers tolerate. It's their money. I mean, the same goes for, incidentally, for all the other things Russian that have been destroyed. Putin seems to shrug his shoulders, but again, it was Russian taxpayer money. So, I mean, for instance, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, which Russia has not responded to, still to this day has not responded to that. Now, again, a lot of Russian money went into that. Russian taxpayer money went into that, so that's gone up again in smoke. And again, Putin's response is, well, hey, one of the pipelines, 3 out of 4 pipelines were destroyed, but one of them is still in service. We're ready to send gas to Europe if Europe wants it. We're happy to provide it. Why would you be happy to provide that? Why would you be happy to provide gas to your enemies to help their economies grow strong? I mean, if one thinks about what Russian strategy is today, one has to assume that they're thinking in terms of a political change in Europe and in the United States, so that they basically the Europeans and the Americans are going to get fed up with this war, and they're going to finally turn around and say, look, we've had it, we can't go on. They'll tell Zelensky, that's it, the jig is up, we just can't do it anymore. Our economies are in the toilet. We can't afford to pay these exorbitant prices for energy. As a result, we're going into industrial and economic decline, and we have to just bring this to an end. We've got other fish to fry. So obviously they're thinking that primarily in case of Germany, where obviously there is a political shift taking place in Germany. We've got another election coming up on Sunday. Again, it's likely that the Alternative für Deutschland party will win this one. So it'll be a big blow to Sergeant Schultz's traffic light coalition. And then, of course, in the United States, there's a good chance that Trump will win. And it's possible, again, it's just possible that Trump will say, enough, and let's bring this thing to an end. Now, I'm assuming that that's what Russia is calculating on, that somehow the West was just going to want to bring this thing to an end. I don't believe that the Russians are just thinking of continuing this war for year after year, this war of attrition, which is just causing so many lives lost, and which if it continues, there's simply no prospect of its coming to an end anytime soon. Ukraine's not about to collapse. Russia knows Ukraine is not about to collapse, so it's just going to go on and on and on. So therefore, the Russian calculation has to be that there'll be a change of heart in the West, and they say we don't want to do this anymore. And it's a possibility. That's not a wholly unrealistic scenario. But if that were my strategy, if that's what I was calculating, that the West is going to abandon this war, realize that the West is losing more than it's gaining, then I would want to put the pressure on the West. The last thing I would want to do is to get that one Nord Stream pipeline working and provide cheap natural gas for Germany. And just as Germany is on the brink of a serious economic crisis. I mean, they've had two quarters of negative economic growth. Germany is in recession. Volkswagen is saying we're going to close down our plants, and other German industrialists are moving their factories out of Germany. And so Germany is in a lot of trouble, as witnessed by the surge of the left and right populists. There's a reason why the AfD and the Sarah Wagenknecht's Bündnis is doing well, because they're very concerned about German economic decline. So if I were a Russian, I would want to emphasize this. I want more economic problems for Germany, not less. Because that's the only way that somehow Germany might have a change of heart and say, look, this war makes no sense. We just want to bring this thing to an end. So therefore, the worse it gets for the German economy, the more likely is it that Germany will start applying pressure on its colleagues in NATO and the EU to bring this war to an end. And instead of that, Putin is offering Germany cheap gas. So Germany said, thanks very much. So that's going to alleviate our problems, and so we won't be facing such a dire economic situation. Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Putin. Oh, and meanwhile, we're going to send some more missiles to Ukraine. It makes absolutely no sense. And so it's just such a bizarre thing. It's like that's the sort of political equivalent of just leaving these missiles lying around. Apparently, you put some tarpaulin covers over them so they can just be blown up by drones. So I don't know. It's it's kind of a mystery to me of how you can conduct a war in this fashion. Anyway, Steve Brown, good to see you, and Mary Grossman, thank you, Mary, for your generosity. So Mary says, Blue Danube flood in Budapest looks like a flood on the Mississippi River with roads always shut down. But the Danube looks more brown in color, and terrible things what's happening in these polluted rivers. Some people actually fish in the Mississippi. No, I think so. I was going past the Danube today, and it looked terrible. Obviously the currents were very strong, but it looked absolutely filthy, and all sorts of horrible things were kind of floating around. As I was looking, and I thought, well, maybe those things that are floating around are crocodiles. And I thought, no, there are no crocodiles in the Danube. But it just looked it, and I guess it's just trees and leaves and shrubbery that was floating in the Danube. But it looked horrible. As you say, it looked brown and very, very unappealing. But certainly here in Budapest, it's been relatively quiet. There've been rain, and as I always point out in my intros, it's raining and it's cold and it's miserable. That's a given, but nothing like the floods that have taken place elsewhere in Hungary. So anyway, thank you, Mary. And then Cynthia, always good to see you, Cynthia. And thank you for your generosity. So Cynthia says, now if Christiana Barsoni Aritsidiakono, so that's the woman who is head of this front company, BAC Consulting, which, as I say, BAC Consulting is obviously a fraud. I mean, it's like, if we were going to set up a company to do basically be just a front company, do not do anything. I mean, what would we call our company? If you lack any imagination, you'd say, how about why don't we call it ABC Enterprises? Oh, that's good, ABC Enterprises. Oh, all right. Well, why don't we call it BAC Enterprises? Yeah, okay, that's a good idea, BAC Enterprises. Um, and then, well, what about instead of enterprises? Let's call it consulting, because consulting just no one knows what the hell consulting is anyway. And then we can just have a completely anodyne website, a completely anodyne entry in LinkedIn, and that's what is the case. So if I didn't, by the time that I looked on the looked in the web for the BAC website, it had already gone. It had been removed, but its LinkedIn page was still there. And if I mean, it was there yesterday. I don't know if it's still there today. But if you look, you will see that you can't figure out what the hell this company does, because it's just full of this corporate gobbledygook about sustainability and development and future and reimagining the future, and all this claptrap that companies peddle in order not to tell us what the company actually does. And you see it in so many websites. You can't figure out what is it that you actually do. I mean, you say you consulting. Um, with whom do you consult? Consult about what? What advice do you give? So there's none of that on LinkedIn, and so that's why it also seems a very small company, which given that this was the company that supposedly manufactured these pages, uh, you know, how are you going to manufacture pages with such a tiny, many pages? How are you going to do it with such a tiny staff? And so, as I say, well, I went to the address listed, and it's clearly an address. Now, whether they had office space there, I doubt. I mean, but its name was on the front door of the building, but you couldn't get into the building. But there was there was no one around when I was there. There was a rather nice cat wandering around. The cat didn't give away too much. And but so it's registered there. This is the address of the company, but this is a residential neighborhood. You can't just put a little factory in the in your backyard and start manufacturing pages there. So obviously it was it's a front company. Anyway, Cynthia goes on. If Christiana Borsoni really was a partner in this planned terrorist attack in Lebanon, why would she do such a thing, knowing full well that she was obviously set up to be a prime target for assassination by Hezbollah, as well as a prime suspect for investigation by The Hague? After all, she's by far the most visible player in this horrific crime, despite the fact that Mossad was the one and only mastermind behind it. Well, I think that she probably had no idea what this was. I think that this company was a front company for Mossad. Mossad set up this company, made her the figurehead, the sort of the public face of this company, and she had no idea what the purpose of this company was. So intelligence agencies do this all the time. They set up innumerable front companies that serve as a cutout. So it's like you don't want to be able to trace guns from A to B, so your hands are all over the guns. So you set up a number of these intermediate companies, and then it's they're the ones who would do this the trading. And so she probably had no idea what this BAC Consulting was supposed to do. She probably got a salary as the president and CEO of this company, but she was obviously not on the the Mossad's plans. And we don't know what other companies are involved. And there must have been other companies. You know, there are a number of these intermediary entities. So we don't yet know who exactly manufactured the pages, and at what stage in the distribution Israel got its hands on the pages and inserted the the explosive devices. So I think that she was just simply the front man or the front woman that Mossad used. I don't think, first of all, I don't think this will be this will go to the Hague, because nothing Israel does will ever goes to the Hague. But even if it did, she will almost certainly plead lack of ignorance and having no idea what the hell was really going on. That this was essentially a fictional entity. I mean, it's something, in order to facilitate the trading. I mean, that's all. It was just there as a kind of a holding company, to facilitate the trade. And we saw that business with Hunter Biden. I mean, like Hunter Biden created all these companies that had no business. I mean, they weren't actually doing anything. And with the Hunter Biden case was essentially, the business was influence. It was just simply a way of funneling money to Hunter Biden. But the companies that Hunter Biden set up really didn't produce anything. They didn't perform any kind of a service. They were just there in order to funnel money to him. And something that in this case, I think, Mossad, which obviously is involved in all kinds of covert operations, global covert operations, needs a number of these cutouts, these intermediaries, to conduct its operations. And as I say, all intelligence services, the CIA does this all the time. I mean, it creates these hundreds of these fake companies as a way of ensuring that nothing can ever be traced to the CIA. So in this case, nothing could ever be traced to Mossad. I don't know whether she can be the target of assassination, because I don't know. We really don't know very much. I mean, I'm skeptical whether this person even exists. You can just create this you have this name, and then claim, oh, she has a PhD from the University College London, and then she went to the London School of Economics, and then she did work for UNESCO or UNICEF or whatever. And then no one actually at any of these organizations says we have no knowledge of her. We never, there's no record of our having ever worked with this person. So I don't know whether this person really exists. There was a picture of her from its, I can't remember whether, there is a picture of her going around, but we have no idea. You can just steal a picture from the internet and then say, oh yeah, this is this Christiana. She didn't look like, to be honest, from that photograph, she didn't look like she got a PhD in philosophy from University College London and then did postdoctoral research, I don't know in what, at the London School of Economics. There's something about that picture that didn't seem plausible. So I don't know whether you'd have prime target. I mean, you have to exist to be a prime target. So, but apparently there is some address, that her personal address. So this place in Sogny-Hout, where I was yesterday, that's supposedly the company offices, even though they don't do any, they don't actually reside there in any way. This company is just simply an address to put in when you register. But she has a separate address of her own. If, of course, she exists. And so we don't know. And again, Cynthia, you know better than anyone. Remember in North by Northwest when the CIA created that fictional person. Was it George Kaufman? I think that was his name, George Kaufman. Oh, he stays here and he stays there and he lives there. That's his address. That's that. But he was completely made up. So again, I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's no such person exists, and that all these details about her, or she lives here. That's her personal address. It's just a fiction. Yeah. So so I think I think it's entirely this company was set up by Mossad for the purpose of carrying out these kinds of covert operations on behalf of Mossad. And the city goes on, by the way, not that it adds any credence to her involvement in this horrific crime, but it might be worth noting that she also graduated from the University of Catania with a physics degree in 2001. Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, it's a physics degree in 2001. And then she went to University College London between 2002 and 2000, which probably explains why some of her work involves nuclear energy and climate change. Well, that's fascinating. Now, has any of it been published? I mean, that would be evidence that she actually exists, or such a person actually exists. Is there any? I mean, she did this physics. Okay, I mean that was just her undergraduate. But I mean, if she did do a PhD in philosophy at University College London, I would imagine there would have to be some published work that we can refer to. And then did postdoctoral work at the London School of Economics. Again, there would have to be some published work, nuclear energy and climate change. So I haven't seen any references to actual work associated with her. Somebody who's such a distinguished mind and who did all this work for UNESCO and whatever. So I think again I think she's a made up person. I'd be very surprised if she wasn't. DJ, thank you very much for your generosity. Thank you. And DJ asks, did you have a white flag with TV taped on the back of your bicycle when you went to the pager company's headquarters? No, I didn't. I did go there by bicycle. It's a little far. It's out in the suburbs, and I have to admit that I don't know the city that well. I mean, I know the center of the city pretty well, but once I get out of the center of the city and I go to the suburbs, even though Budapest is quite a small city, so it's not like London where the suburbs are miles and miles away from the center. But nonetheless, I get a little lost when I'm out in the suburbs. So I didn't go there by bicycle. I went by taxi. But there weren't too many people there. There were one or two journalists lurking around, all very unfriendly, all amazingly uncooperative and unnecessarily competitive. One would have thought that journalists could pass around any information they glean so that everybody gets something, but no, no one wanted to share any information. There was some guy from the BBC there, and then there was some guy from the Hungarian TV station there. But as I say, the building, very, very, very. I mean, you've probably seen pictures of the building. I mean, it's quite a nice building, but no one seemed to be around other than this the cat. But I don't know whether the cat went with the building or not. It may have just been a cat from a neighboring building. It was just simply hanging around in this house. But other than that, there wasn't very much. As I say, I even before I got there, I didn't think for one moment that anything was being manufactured here. This is a suburb. This is not there's no factories here. This is residential or office space. There's no room for a factory. Carlos FR says, I sure hope my iPhone doesn't explode. Yeah, I you want to be careful. But that's but the funny thing was that that Nasrallah had apparently in February of this year had warned Hezbollah members, well, you want to be careful with your iPhone or with your cell phone, because whenever you have your cell phone on, you're essentially identifying yourself as a target for Israel. So don't have your cell phone on. Obviously, this was a sensible advice. What surprised me about that is that I had always assumed that Hezbollah was already aware of this. I didn't even realize that Hezbollah was using cell phones, because again, I'd been led to believe by Scott Ritter and the rest of them that somehow Hezbollah is so on the ball, is so aware of all of the security threats to it, that it wouldn't do anything so stupid as to be talking on a cell phone. Because if you talk on a cell phone, you're obviously identifying yourself as a target. But anyway, so Nasrallah had issued this warning, and then said no. So instead of cell phones, we should go to pages. So it's over pages. So that's how the sequence of events apparently unfolded. That they decided to switch from cell phones to pages, but somehow Israel got in on this on the pages. But again, it was quite a speedy operation, because if that's the case, if this only happened in February, and then they began this whole sequence of events of ordering these pages, who recommended this company in Taiwan as the one that produces these pages? I don't know who told Nasrallah or whoever, hey, this is the company to go to. They produce the best pages in the world. I mean, apart from anything else, I wouldn't trust anything coming from Taiwan. Taiwan is thoroughly infiltrated by the Americans. It's run again, very run by the Americans. So you go to a Taiwanese company, I wouldn't myself trust anything coming from Taiwan. But even they use a number of cutout companies. So yeah, so it's kind of irony that having said quite rightly, well, we don't want to use cell phones, go to pages. Now you have to go back to the practice that spies used to do, which is doing everything in the physical presence. Don't use technology. It's got to be direct physical meetings in places where you can't be observed, in places where you can't be surveilled, and in places therefore where you can't be targeted. I mean, that's how spies used to operate. You meet in a public place with a lot of people around. You exchange notes while you're walking in the park. No one can see you exchanging notes or books or all the techniques of spying that we remember watching from Le Carré and others. But you have to go back to that. You try to use sophisticated technology, you're basically asking to get clobbered, because technology is the easiest thing in the world to infiltrate. And a DJ has a picture. My bike when I campaigned for Bernie in 2015. Oh, so you campaigned for Bernie? He must have been very disappointed in in Bernie. And I have to say, I never thought much of Bernie. I never thought much of him in 2015, 2016. Always had a low opinion of him. I never bought into all the crap people were peddling about Bernie in 2015, 2016. I mean, leave aside Bernie in 2020, leave aside Bernie today. But even back then, I thought he was a ridiculous figure. But part of it is, of course, I remembered him from 1999 when he was a supporter of the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. So this was supposedly a lefty candidate, supposedly anti-war, supposedly a socialist, who was nonetheless a supporter of the NATO bombing campaign. So once he did that, I never believed anything that Bernie would peddle subsequently. But anyway. Steve Brown says, by deception, thou shalt make war. Yeah, obviously. Exactly. That's how you do it. And however monstrous they are, and they are monstrous, they're doing what they're supposed to do. I mean, they want their side to win. The real issue is, do we want our side to win? And if we do want our side to win, what are we doing to ensure that we win? So that's why, I've said this before. When we can be aghast at Boris Johnson's cynicism, Boris Johnson's immorality, at sabotaging the Istanbul agreement, but you have to say, yeah, that's what Boris Johnson would do. That's what NATO would do. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Don't just allow Boris Johnson to determine whether there is or is not a peace agreement. Anyway, Steve Brown says, the former deputy head of the US NSA was gloating about Israel's terror attack yesterday in the France 24 news program. Yeah. So I saw that. That's how they're all gloating about it. It's amazing. I mean, they're gloating about something that obviously was an act of recklessness. It was obviously an act that was going to lead to a massive loss of civilian life. Again, it could have been much worse. I mean, it could have, somebody could have been on a plane. Israel had no idea. The Hezbollah guy may be on a plane somewhere. So it blows up in a plane, and then then the plane crashes on people below, or on a train, or whatever. This is an absolutely reckless action. Marty, good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your generosity as always. Thank you so much. And Steve Brown said, Yahweh's chosen terrorists. Yeah, that's true. And then Danuki says, I'm starting to think that Haniyeh's offing might have been a joint Israeli-Iranian or even mostly Iranian operation. I'm still waiting for that cold, calculating, devastating revenge that Iran has already triumphantly carried out in advance on the internet and in the minds of morons and grifters like Danny Haiphong, Escobar, Moon of Alabama, any minute now. Yeah, no, that's right. That's exactly right. As I say, the Iran and Hezbollah are, I think, quite aware of their own limitations. So while Iran does indeed, talk about, in this hyperventilate about things that it's going to do, Iran doesn't do them because Iran knows that there is no symmetry between Iran's situation and Israel's. Iran cannot fight a war against Israel because behind Israel stands the United States, and Israel has nuclear weapons and Iran doesn't. Iran made the decision not to develop nuclear weapons. I'm not sure why Iran made that decision, but they made that decision. Now, of course, once you make that decision that you're not going to have nuclear weapons, then of course you're a sitting duck. If you make that, if your main enemy, Israel, and your main enemy is the United States, both of whom are nuclear armed, and you decide, well, we're not going to have nuclear weapons, then of course you're a sitting duck. You can't then turn around and say, gee, we're always getting clobbered. Why? We're getting our scientists off. We're getting our nuclear program sabotaged. Um, we're getting bombed. So we're getting subjected to terrorist attacks. We're getting assassinations on our soil. And, well, what do you think was going to happen? I mean, you don't have the means of retaliating, and you don't have the means of threatening to retaliate. So now that's been Iran's action. And of course, we know Iran does not want a war with Israel. Of course, Iran doesn't want a war with Israel. Iran cannot win a war against Israel because Israel has nuclear weapons. It doesn't matter. Iran is 10 times the size of Israel by population, but Iran cannot win a war because a non-nuclear power cannot win a war against a nuclear power. And that's why Iran blusters a little bit, but ultimately it goes to the Americans and says, please get us off the hook. We've made all these promises, we've made all these threats, but please find a way whereby we don't lose face. We actually do something, not enough to hurt you or to Israel, but we actually are seen to be doing something, and therefore we won't lose face, but we won't have actually hurt you in any way. And then the Americans say, all right, let's think of some little plan of action whereby you're allowed to hit Israel or the United States in a useless, gentle way, so you won't save face, but you won't inflict such casualties that we'd be forced to attack you. And they did that, obviously, with the attack on the U.S. bases in Iraq following the assassination of Soleimani, and then they did that following the attack on the sorry, following the attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Now, in the case of Haniyeh, Iran still has yet to respond. Iran hasn't done anything. So even that pro forma response hasn't taken place yet. But yeah, I mean, all the rest of them about how Iran is now immensely strong. There's nothing at all Israel can do about Iran, and the axis of resistance is now so strong that Israel's situation is hopeless. The American situation is hopeless. America's going to be pushed out of the Middle East, and because of the axis of resistance. This is pure fantasy. This isn't political analysis. It's just pure, just fantasy land. That's it. It's just entirely making wishful thinking reality. So, anyway, Steve Brown says, yes, but recall the Wall Street Journal and the banking monetary system rules the West, and that system is heavily Zionist. There will be no justice in the world until Wall Street and its banks are turned to ash. Well, that may well be. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, again, I'm not saying BRICS may, one day do this, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization will do that, and then, China will do the other, and Iran will, dominate the Middle East. All these fantastic things could happen, but they're not going to happen tomorrow. They're not going to happen next week. They're not going to happen next year. They're not going to happen the next decade. We're a long, long way from that. And that's okay, as long as we just have a realistic expectation and stop listening to Scott Ritter. So that's the important thing, that we've got to, rid ourselves of this absolutely ridiculous way of thinking. Cynthia says, oh dear, I just learned that Ms. Arisidianko, this is this Bartonu woman, may indeed not be a real person. Well, what a surprise. Everything about her could then be fake. Yeah, I think. If that's so, when she told the press, I don't make the pages, I'm just the intermediate, she couldn't have said that in person or by video call. No, I don't think, there's no indication, as far as I know, that anyone had actually spoken to her or by video call. It may have just been a message from someone, email, whatever. So I, again, no, or even if you talk to somebody, who the hell do you know who you're talking to? Just some voice, and then you never hear from this person again. But the office building where she was staying is definitely for real. So tracking its owner down should lead you to the person that created her. But the question is, who'll do her in first? The Hezbollah or the Hague? Well, again, as I say, that is simply the company was registered. That's the address that was registered in the Hungarian registry. The company has a tax number, and the company has a business address. That's the business address of the company. And yeah, there's a sign on the door, just written. If somebody had written this sign, it was not like there's a plaque or anything like that. There's just simply a sign. Oh yeah, that this is thing. But even from the interviews say that nobody ever showed up for that company other than clearly whoever called to tell the owner of this property, oh, this is the business address of such and such a company. And they say, okay, well, this is the business address. But that doesn't mean that company has office space in that building. And I don't get the sense that this with BAC Consulting had any office space there. It was just simply, anybody can register a company. You register a company, and then and you get a tax ID, and then you just you say, okay, this is now the business address. Any mail that comes for me here, somebody will come and pick it up. So again, this is a front company. It doesn't exist. You just, again, it's not very hard to do that. You just set up a company, you get a tax ID, you register it, and that's it. Nobody knows exactly what you do. Nobody really cares what you do. But I think which means that it's used by others. She doesn't exist. I'm absolutely convinced she doesn't exist. And so therefore, you can't kill a person who doesn't exist. It's like, as I said, it's like George Kaufman in North by Northwest. He didn't exist. They created this person. They put in all these details about his habits, probably, and all sorts of things about his educational achievements. You can even create a picture, kind of a ubiquitous picture. So, some handsome-looking guy, photographs with him with friends and whatever. It's total fiction. That intelligence services create. So I don't think anyone's going to get her because she doesn't exist. But because she doesn't exist, and because this company is an intermediary company, the company doesn't do any manufacturing. Because if the company did manufacturing of these pages, then you'd have to ask, well, where are they doing the manufacturing? They can't be doing it here. That's a residential building. There may be some offices there in this building, but there's not a factory. To make pages, you need a factory. You need a workshop. And a residential neighborhood doesn't provide the facilities to create a factory. Also, what was interesting is that the address was, I think, 33A, Sony Oud. But I only saw 33. I didn't see a 33A. So again, which again shows that this is a kind of a fake. But whoever is the owner of the building would have to answer the question as to why did you agree to claim or to put on your front door that this is BAC Consulting is here. Because if you knew that there's no office space, BAC doesn't have any office space, why did you do that? Why did you claim, who paid you to claim that this is somehow the proper address for BAC Consulting? So Steve Brown says, US MK4C Triton spy drone off the coast of Lebanon at 3:30 p.m. on the 17th, precisely when the Satanic State carried out its act of terror. Yeah, we didn't know nothing. We knew nothing at all. No, we just didn't know. We're just trying to catch up. We're watching CNN day and night, trying to figure out what's going on, because we're just not in any position to know what's going on. And the sentence says, regardless of that, I still think that Mossad pulled it off all because they infiltrated Hezbollah. Yeah, absolutely. The Mossad operation was made into an inside job of sorts. Absolutely. No, I have no doubt at all that Mossad had thoroughly infiltrated Hezbollah. Mossad knew exactly the supply lines and how to get the beepers from whoever manufactured them and wherever they were manufactured. Or maybe they were basically somebody else bought the beepers and then just simply insert, again, these intermediary companies made the purchase, and then at some stage in this process, somebody inserted these explosive devices. But the Mossad's infiltration of Hezbollah is so thorough, because they were in on this moment. They made this move in February from no more cell phones. Let's move on to pages. And then, Mossad was the one that provided, the pages, or they knew at what stage they could get their hands on the pages. But this network of these trading companies, that obviously Mossad was in control of that, and then be in a position where they could put in the explosive devices. So what that tells you is that completely, Hezbollah was infiltrated by Mossad. Or the Americans. Yeah, because again, I've always been a little skeptical about the glories of Mossad. I always think that basically the Americans are the ones who are behind this. So again, could be the Americans. But either way, I mean, this is not a good look for Hezbollah. And then Steve Brown says, BAC Consulting is real and verifiably exists. Strangely, though, is either in hiding or has not been seen or heard from for quite some time, despite reports. But there is so much CIA, NSA disinfo circulating. Who knows? BAC Consulting. But that doesn't prove. I mean, I've seen that website. That doesn't prove that BAC Consulting actually exists. This is a made-up company, made up for the purpose of conducting covert operations on behalf of Mossad and maybe on behalf of Israel. As I said, intelligence agencies have innumerable fake companies to carry out covert operations, to transfer money from one person to another, to transfer goods from one person to another. You have to make sure that there's no way that you can trace the origin of an operation, the orders from wherever they're coming, the money that wherever it's coming, to the actual perpetrators. That's why you need all sorts of cutouts along the way. And one of these cutouts was BAC Consulting. So that profile that we see that it's just something that's made up. They made this person up. She's Hungarian, Italian, and she, as I say, she got PhD at University College London, and so on. But who is she? I mean, that where what if she has all these academic qualifications? What has she done? What has she written? Then should be fairly straightforward to establish who she is, and then find her. And then Stephen Striga definitely exists. Personal knowledge, Striga. Anyway, Cynthia then says, whether Christina Barsoni Arciano fake or not, she does have a website on Pinterest, which is still up and running. But as you can see below, her last name is reversed on her site. Yeah, but that in itself, yeah, it's reversed on site. But these things, all of these things, the things that appear on the internet, they just pick things up. I mean, if you have a profile, you have a LinkedIn profile of yourself and a LinkedIn profile of your supposed business, this tends to get picked up by other internet sites, and then they in turn pass it on to other internet sites. So it doesn't really matter that you have some, but the origin of all of these sites is I think probably the LinkedIn or the website of the company. Now, the website of the company has now disappeared, which itself is kind of interesting. Why would it suddenly disappear? I mean, if it's a real bona fide company, boom, it vanished completely on that day, and all you have is this LinkedIn. But nonetheless, if you have a website, then it gets picked up by all sorts of other internet entities. So I don't, the fact that Pinterest and any number of other places you'll see it doesn't mean that this person exists. Anyway, Stephen says, I think at this point, this points out the dollar cooperation of contractors, subcontractors, subcontractors with the access of vile, the state like bleeding obvious. Yeah. When I worked as a subcontractor to Checkpoint Software, I have no idea the corporation was based in Israel. Well, nobody ever does. I mean, nobody knows where the corporate headquarters are. I mean, that's the thing about these all of these shell companies. The whole point of setting up these shell companies that nobody ever really knows who is the ultimate owner of these companies. So Stone River, it was good to see you. Thank you very much. Are we frogs in a pot of water slowly being brought to the boil? Could be. Could be. It's kind of an interesting thing, and when we have the this information warfare that's being waged, you now have. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but the policymaking elites have now determined that pretty much any opinions that they don't like need to be removed once and for all from the internet. So this woman, this Karine Jean-Pierre, who is the White House spokesperson, she has this habit of declaring anything, any views at all she doesn't like, any position that is detrimental or hostile or critical of the Biden administration as incredibly dangerous. Those are her favorite words, incredibly dangerous. Because apparently if you criticize the Biden administration, you might be enabling somebody to get a gun and take a pot shot at somebody or other in the Biden administration or civil servants or whatever. So it's incredibly dangerous. Everything is incredibly dangerous. And that's, of course, the rationale for cracking down on any kind of speech, because you say, well, it's incredibly dangerous. Because, of course, you can always say, well, this could lead one person or to do this and another person to do that. Therefore, we need to outlaw this speech. It's incredibly dangerous, and that I think is there's going to be a lot more of that. But I mean, interestingly enough, despite the fact that with Karine Jean-Pierre about this incredibly dangerous, they're the only threats of violence, the only actual acts of violence that are perpetrated. It's always perpetrated on Republicans or Donald Trump or Supreme Court justices, conservative Supreme Court justices. Somebody or other from Alaska has just been indicted for threatening the lives of the 6 Supreme Court justices that had voted for the vote, or rather, that had supported the decision, Supreme Court decision that says a president is immune for his official acts. That was the 6th Supreme Court justice. So this guy from Alaska basically threatened the lives of those Supreme Court justices. And of course, we had the threat to the life of Kavanaugh. Somebody actually came to Kavanaugh's door to try to kill him. And then, of course, we've had the 2 assassination attempts on Trump. We've had the shooting of the Republicans at the baseball game. So the only violence is always being perpetrated against the Republicans are on the right, but somehow the Democrats are very skilled at presenting themselves as if they are the victims of violence. So Karine Jean-Pierre, it's incredibly dangerous because there's so many people who are out to get her. I have to also mention that the dogs are getting very, very angry. They want to see a little bit more action when it comes to the tip jar, because they're very frustrated, and they're, as I've always said, they take out their frustration and satisfaction on me, because they always blame me for the lack of movement when it comes to the tip jar. So, if you have a few bob in your pocket, as I always say, whip them out, dunk them in there. Then I can go to them tomorrow and say, well, I didn't completely waste my time. I didn't completely make a right Charlie of myself. I did manage to raise a little bit of money for your tip jar, so that maybe that'll put you in a better mood. But that's the best that I can do, because they're very hostile. They're very angry. They don't. I'm happy just to talk like this. They're not like me. They're very materialistic. They're interested in money. They're interested in food. They're not interested in these big, important, deep subjects that we like to talk about. They just want, hey, well, you can talk till the cows come home. What's in it for me? What's in the tip jar? That's their attitude, and I don't know how to answer them. I've never really known how to answer them. So if you have some money, if you're flush with cash, I don't think anybody is, then let's try and keep them a little bit happier, and less likely for them to attack me tomorrow. Go straight for my jaw tomorrow. Anyway, Cynthia says, oh no, I now found Cristiana Barsoni Ariziani on the IMDb site. Her mini bio stated that she's known for Patient 17, which I linked below. She's listed as a production assistant for this film. All right, let's see let me see this. So this Patient 17, what is this? This was made in 2011. All right, let's see what's on. What happened there? Well, that's odd. Okay, so Christiana, Patient 17. What is it? All right. Sam and Gabby, two medical interns, are asked to investigate patient Sarah in a criminal case, but as they search for the truth, they witness unexplained events. All right, let's see. That doesn't tell us much. What does storyline? That's okay. The storyline. User reviews. All right, let's see what the user review. So, user review says an interesting topic ruined by a whole lot of nothing. Without exaggeration, 1 5-second bit of information for every 3 minutes of film. Complete refusal to give us what we came for. For example, at the beginning, we have to watch the guy get out of bed, wash his face, dry it off, a close-up of him firing up the stove, then breaking the eggs to fry in the pan, with slowly cooked breakfast, and taking a motorcycle ride before anything even remotely having to do with the topic of the movie is mentioned. A grueling slog through filler to get to tiny morsels of what most people would call BS to begin with. If someone goes in with an open mind, it will quickly close due to the complete disrespect of the viewer's time. So that's the film that she was a production assistant to. Okay, well that's very interesting. One would have to say that's kind of interesting. Why would this person with this PhD in philosophy, who done postdoctoral research at the London School of Economics, be associated with this this film? Again, sounds very much like you pick a name, and then you kind of create a sort of a fictional entity. And then Cynthia goes on, by the way, the film mentioned above is a supernatural thriller about two medical interns. Yeah. When they search into a past, they discover disturbing events that put their lives in danger. At first rivals, they finally team up to uncover the secret of patient 17. Well, I mean, when you describe the film that way, it sounds, sounds quite intriguing. It doesn't sound like it was a very good film, judging by that one film review. But it sounds quite good. But nonetheless, how did she come to be associated with this with this film? And then Dan Rock asks, is this Barshania a real person? Has she been seen or spoken to? As we talked about that, I don't think anyone has seen her. There's a picture of her. The picture just looks, again, a ubiquitous picture. I'm quite sure you can find lots of pictures like that, attractive young women on the internet. So it doesn't really mean anything. Having social media and email doesn't make you real. Exactly. You can just absolutely the easiest thing in the world to create. Dan Rock says the fictional character in Norther. Oh yeah, I stand corrected. It wasn't George Kaufman. It was George Kaplan. Well, it's an easy mistake to make. George Kaufman was a kind of a big, a big writer on Broadway in the 1930s. George Kaufman and Maurice Hart. They did a lot of comedies, musicals on Broadway, and that's why I said George Kaufman. But it's not George Kaufman. It was George Kaplan, the fictional character. Fictional, I mean, in the sense that he was created by the CIA. He never existed. Yeah, but that's it. It was George Kaplan, not George Kaufman. And then Cynthia says, but if you take money from a criminal in order to do criminal work for them, how can you say you're not involved in the crime? Well, you can't. I mean, you're right. I mean, if that's what happened, then certainly she would be implicated. But it's not clear that is what happened. I mean, this whole thing with BAC Consulting, we only know about this because this Taiwanese company says, "Oh well, no, we didn't make these beepers. We just have our brand name, and the beepers were made by BAC Consulting." So we don't know if that's true. But what we can see is that this BAC Consulting is not a firm that actually does anything. So it looks very much like a cutout, an intermediary used by intelligence services. Now, um, if in some ways BAC Consulting was involved in inserting these explosive devices, which is what's really going on here. It's not like they manufactured, at least as far as we can tell, it's not like they manufactured um, these pages that would explode. They whoever manufactured them and then distributed them, then they came into the hands of Mossad, and then Mossad put in the explosive devices. So whatever, even if BAC Consulting was involved in at some stage in this whole distribution process, as likely as not, as she was a cutout, she would know nothing about what was really going on. Absolutely nothing. I mean, that the way these intelligence operations work, these covert operation, is that um, everybody is kept unaware of everybody else in the chain. So that's the point. So that will therefore you can't really give anything away because you don't know anything. You just know the one person that you deal with, and therefore you don't know anything else as to what exactly is the purpose of this covert operation. So it's a way of plausible deniability. You don't know what's going on because you're just this one cog in the chain. And so that's what I'm assuming, that she really, even if she existed, and even if one could get to her, and even if she was taking money, chances are she didn't know who she was taking money from, and chances are she didn't know what the purpose of this whole enterprise was. She may have just thought, "Oh, I'm just in the business of shipping, beepers from country A to country B. That's all I'm doing. I'm just, facilitating this. So she wouldn't know about the part where the explosive devices were inserted. So I don't think there's no real criminal liability on that score. There might be criminal liability in terms of a fraud, whether she was taking part in a fraud. And that, but I don't know what the law there would be. I mean, if she was just taking money, you say, well, then, and she didn't know what she was taking the money for, just other than, well, this is an import-export business, and you earn a fee for facilitating import-exports. So that's not necessarily anything fraudulent, but you wouldn't really know what the real purpose of this um, supply chain is. So I mean, to be criminally liable, I mean, there has to be the criminal intent. I mean, you have to actually know what is going on, and therefore I mean, you can be intent is that you may want to do this this criminal act, but you could be an accomplice. I mean, because if you knew what was going to be done and you didn't do anything to stop it, you didn't do anything to report it, and you helped facilitate the crime, then yeah, you are obviously criminally liable. I just doubt whether she was at any level in this chain whereby she knew anything that was going on. As I say, that's even assuming that this such and such a person exists. And then DJ asks, did the cat have a Star of David on its collar? I didn't see it. I mean, he didn't have a collar. He was just, he looked like a very well-fed, well looked after cat. Very ordinary cat, just kind of a tabby and white cat. Very kind of, sort of friendly and but a little standoffish, as cats often are. and again, he was hanging around inside the in the yard of this building, but then he at some point he left and then went off somewhere else. I don't know whether that meant that he didn't actually reside at this house, but he was just hanging around, or he was just went off. He did reside there and just went off on a walk, but so he was there for a while and then he kind of vanished. So, but I tried to ask him, do you know anything about Mossad or anything like that? But he didn't seem to communicate. He's not quite like these dogs with the Gaggle who do communicate, and rather nastily. So this cat really didn't communicate very much. And then DJ says, I had a front row seat as to the collapse of Bernie. Yeah, it was dismal. And then Steve Brown says, if by the trickery thou shalt make war, folks program the back door into the firmware, it's unlikely that Hezbollah would detect that. Supposedly an OTA update was sent to the devices. No doubt there are moles in Hezbollah. Heck, for a few million, the evil empire could buy me. Maybe depends, except for some bomb pages. Well, I think that's right. I think, look, it's an unfortunate thing that you can buy people. I mean, it's not that hard. People are always short of funds, and there's always and like most what one would call conspiracy organizations, they're always double agents. So somebody in Hezbollah may well pick up a nice paycheck even as they continue to work for Hezbollah. So it's not like, doesn't mean that they're necessarily gone over to the other side, but they are just picking up money. So that's the problem. Almost all revolutionary organizations, like the revolutionary organizations in Russia and elsewhere, were thoroughly infiltrated by the Russian secret police, and they were collecting money. They're taking money from the Russian secret police, Akhrana. Even as they continued to work in the revolutionary organization, they didn't see anything incompatible between the two. So it could well be that those people within Hezbollah who picked up a nice cool sum of money from Israel, or from the Americans, the same thing. I mean, anything you get from Israel is basically coming from the United States, and basically revealed all sorts of information, and then they can continue working in the organization. Well, of course, police informers are the same thing. Police informers, they provide information to the police even as they continue to work inside a criminal organization and continue committing crimes. But the interesting thing is, I mean, what will the attitude to Israel be? I would have thought that hatred towards Israel will intensify, but of course, there's so much hatred already towards Israel. It's something that can never be lessened or remedied or anything like that, because it's I think pretty much everyone in Lebanon loathes Israel from the bottom of their heart. So this action by Israel will, of course, intensify the loathing, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you already loathe someone utterly and unconditionally, how much more can you loathe Israel? So therefore, Israel figures as it's always figured. But what the hell does it matter? They hate us anyway, so we can perpetrate all these atrocities. And all the Arabs, the Iranians, they will hate us and they denounce us, and their hatred this year is greater than their hatred last year, and last year their hatred was greater than the year before that. But that's Israel just lives with it. So now in terms of their their overall strategy, it doesn't really do anything very much other than continue with its war against its neighbors, and it's been waging a war against its neighbors really, for 100 years. So none of that really makes make much of a difference. Steve Brown says CIA, NSA is operated by trillionaires, runs the West, not politicians. The DJ says BAC Consulting, badass cat consulting. That's good. And then Steve Brown says Arnon Milchan had dozens of fake companies. Yeah, the guy, yes, the guy in Hollywood. Yeah, that's right. Fake. That's it. It's all goes through these fake companies. That's the way all intelligence services operate. So this is this is unquestionably a fake company set up. It goes through this process of BAC Consulting. It's totally even meaningless. They can't even come up with a name other than sort of, well, what are the three letters of the alphabet? First three letters of the alphabet. Oh, ABC. All right. Well, that's a little obvious to say ABC Consulting. Why don't we switch the first and the second letters? Yeah, let's say BAC Consulting. So and then you kind of you post a LinkedIn page, talk absolute rubbish, usual gobbledygook. You can copy and paste this kind of gobbledygook from any company at all. They all talk the same stuff about sustainability, cooperation, partnership, looking to the future. I mean, that's the way they all talk. And of course inclusiveness, bung in, we're committed to diversity, and that's it. Just it's all a kind of a fiction, but easy to do. Steve Brown, thank you for that meme of Karine Jean-Pierre. It's incredibly dangerous. Karine, incredibly dangerous. Jean-Pierre. Yokabachi, thank you. Always good to see you. Hey, hello, George. Can you get locals to allow me to buy coins using the Android app? Can you do that? I don't know. I'll ask. I don't know whether you can do it. I mean, I would assume you could do it on an Android or an iPhone. I mean, you can obviously do it on the website, but I don't know how you can do it on the phone. And then Steve Brown says, but thank you. It's always good to see you. Steve Brown says, coding a backdoor in software would not involve manufacturing. No, I mean, the actual part of it in which the explosives were inserted, I'm quite sure no one knew about that at all, other than Mossad. And again, maybe the CIA. I thought again, the CIA. No, they don't really know. These people, the policymakers, Admiral Kirby, who speaks on behalf of the administration. He says, "Well, we don't know what's going on. We're just watching it on CNN. We have no idea what's happening." Well, Admiral Kirby wouldn't know about what the CIA was doing. The CIA doesn't brief the press, the White House press office, doesn't brief the State Department, doesn't brief the president about its covert action. So this could well have been done by the CIA. It could well have been Mossad. Could have well have been a combination of Mossad and the CIA. I don't think this woman, even if she exists, had the slightest idea about the explosive devices, and they wouldn't reveal anything like that to her. I mean, it would be crazy to tell her anything like that. Her task was, if she exists, she said, "Hey, you're the CEO of a company. You'll pick up a nice salary. What will I have to do? No, nothing. You just have to register the company, and in a couple of times a year there'll be some transactions going through your company. That's it, nothing more. Okay, that sounds all right. That's a nice little deal. But she wouldn't, that's all they'll tell her. Just a couple of transactions a year. And Steve Brown says, what about that spy whale that Russia created? Not a good analogy, but pales in comparison with exploding beepers. Yeah. And DJ5314 says, Motorola Solutions, Israel Limited. Yeah. And then Danrock says, you'd be surprised about hatred to Israel. United Arab Emirates has tons of flights to Tel Aviv even now. Lebanese Maronites helped Israel in the past. Massacres in Sabra and Shatila. Well, that was then. You're right. I mean, back in 1982, Israel wasn't hated in Lebanon in the way it's hated now. But yeah, you're right. Even the Shiites of Lebanon in 1982 didn't hate Israel. And of course, the Maronite Christians didn't hate Israel. And you're right about, Sabra and Shatila. That was it was basically this Maronite militia of Bashir Gemayel who perpetrated those massacres of the Palestinians. So that, yeah, you're right. But it was the Israeli occupation, which went on for many years, that turned erstwhile allies of Israel's against Israel. I mean, there was no Hezbollah before the 1982 invasion because the Shiites had been quite friendly with Israel. The same with the Maronite Christian. I don't think there's any. So today, unlike 1982, I don't think there's anyone in Lebanon who is well disposed towards Israel. And the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, well, yeah, they don't care. They just want to make money, and that's all they care about. And so, yeah, but they can't. If they want to go on making money, they can't really make any kind of a peace with Israel. Saudi Arabia has said this repeatedly. However much Saudi Arabia probably would be happy to make a peace with Israel, has said, we're not going to do anything until there's some movement towards a Palestinian state. But they have to say that. Again, I don't think they care very much about the Palestinians. But in order to survive, they do have to go through this process of saying, well, we have to see some movement towards a Palestinian state. So good luck with that. DJ, thank you very much for your generosity. Something for the dogs. I appreciate it. The dogs will appreciate your gesture. It's me that they don't appreciate. They appreciate anyone who puts coins into the tip jar. It's just me that they have a problem with because they just don't think I'm doing enough to keep that tip jar filled up. But they'll definitely be grateful to you. Cynthia says, I still think that if someone does investigate this mass murder in Lebanon, they will find out who did it. Well, who then? That's an interesting question. When they will find out now. I'm quite sure that if Biden was even around, I mean, he maybe just spends all his time in bed. But if Biden really wanted to get to the bottom of it, he could call in the director of Central Intelligence. He could call in the director of National Intelligence. He could call in Blinken into his office. He'd have all of them in his office. And he would say, what the hell went on here? Who did this? And I am quite sure that among the three of them, they have a pretty good idea of who was behind this and how it was done. And I'm quite sure that the CIA could get on, even if there are any uncertainties, the CIA could get on the phone to Mossad and tell them, how did you actually do this? I mean, what were the mechanics? That's assuming the CIA doesn't already know exactly how this was pulled off. So when you say, well, if there's an investigation, they will find out who did it. Yeah, I'm quite sure that it could be done by the end of today if there was a will within the US government to determine who did it. Now, once you have done that, what exactly do you do with it? The United States doesn't have any jurisdiction over Israel. It can't put any Israeli on trial. There's no, the British probably still have some presence in the Middle East. The British could also determine who did this and how this was done. But the British, again, have no desire and have no jurisdiction over any Israelis. So now we get to the ICC. Well, the ICC already has a very strong case against Israel, but the ICC, hasn't done anything. And there was that flurry of excitement over Karim Khan, that he was going to issue an indictment against Benjamin Netanyahu, and I think Gallant or Ben Gvir or one or the other, and it never happened. He said, "Well, I'm going to seek out an arrest warrant." Well, what happened about that? The judges have never signed off on it, and there they had a very strong case. You don't need to do any investigating. They already had a very strong case about war crimes and crimes against humanities perpetrated by Israel. I mean, it was all detailed by South Africa in its complaint to the World Court, but they didn't do anything. There's still no arrest warrant against Netanyahu. And again, and that's something that's out in the open. You don't need to do any investigating. But just going back to the investigating, the ICC doesn't have the facilities to investigate. They don't have a police force. They don't have forensic labs or anything like that. They don't have rights to interrogate anyone or anything. So that they can't do it. The Americans know exactly what happened. The CIA and Mossad work very closely. They know exactly what happened, but they don't care because they're quite happy with this. Then they thought, yeah, that's great. That's very cute. That's really clever. And again, I have my doubts that Mossad is that good. I've always had my doubts that Mossad was that good. I think that it acquired this reputation because most of its spectacular feats were actually done by the CIA, but the CIA was happy to let Mossad take all the glory because obviously the CIA doesn't want to be known as carrying out assassinations. So if Israel is happy to let people think that it's carried out assassinations, then let Israel, let Israel be kind of tell the world, yeah, we did it. Or essentially, do the no comment routine, and thereby everyone assumes that Israel was behind it. The CIA obviously is going to say, no, we had nothing to do with it. Of course, that's going to be their position. But I think this operation has all the earmarks of a CIA Mossad joint operation. So right now, you don't need any investigation. Biden can just haul in his top intelligence people, CIA director, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, ask them, what the hell happened? How was this done? And they would tell him. Now, of course, he's not going to do it because, again, presidents don't want to get themselves directly involved in these things because then, of course, they could be on the hook. That's how you maintain the plausible deniability. They don't ask their intelligence services what it is that they're doing. They just do their thing. They don't tell the president what they do, and the president doesn't ask them what it is they do. So there's not going to be any investigation because, as with Nord Stream, the culprit is fairly obvious, and nobody really wants to find the culprit and accuse the culprit. So just like Nord Stream, we're now, what's it, 2 years on, and we still don't know who did it. Wow. We still don't know. We can arrest grannies in Alaska for spending 5 minutes on the lawn outside Capitol Hill, but we can't find out who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So where are we? And then Steve Brown says, I dislike my vile empire employers intensely, but always accepted their dollars. Shame on me in hindsight. Well, hey, we all have to make a living. We have to eat. It's just not something that we can we can avoid. So it's we've all had to make compromises in life. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too much. Steve says it's the golden rule: he who hath the gold rules. Yeah, and dog cat food. Steve said, Brown says, Noam Federman and Baruch Goldstein look like saints in comparison with this pager terror. Yeah, no, the pager terror is yeah, I agree. It's horrific in its wanton and reckless disregard for human life. I mean, knowing that so many innocents are going to be hurt, and we already know children were killed, and you know perfectly well this is going to happen, and then the lies that somehow this was a targeted attack and so on, it really is quite appalling. Dan Rock, thank you very much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. And Dan Rock says, for the dogs, or if you went for Behemoth, the cat, maybe he talks. Yeah, no, I rather like the cat. He was a big cat, and he was talking. He was meowing quite loudly, but unfortunately I don't really understand cat language, so I couldn't quite get what he was communicating. I mean, I understand the dogs. They're mean, and I can understand their meanness, but I couldn't quite figure out what the cat was trying to communicate. So we're none the wiser. But maybe the cat didn't really know very much. Maybe that's what he was saying. I don't know nothing. That may have been what he was saying. So, and then Steve says, if I ever deliberately caused just one person to lose an eye, I could never live with myself. Extension being that covert services people are just favoring you. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think that's once you're in that line of work, you pretty much say, well, hey, this is what we do. This is what was it that Hyman Roth said in Godfather 2? This is the business we have chosen, and I think that's right. This is the business we have chosen. Anyway, so anyway, my time has elapsed. Thank you very much, everybody who joined me. Thank you very much for your questions and your comments. Really appreciate them. And please, if you can, if you haven't voted yet in the as to what movie we're going to screen next Monday, the poll is on Western views on Russia, Russians, and the Soviet Union. We had the winner screened last Monday, and so we've now got the runner-up. So if you can still vote for the runner-up, and then we're gonna screen that next Monday. At the moment, Woody Allen's Love and Death holds a narrow lead, but it's really so narrow that even one vote going another way could break Woody Allen's hold. So please, if you can, vote in that poll. Otherwise, we're going to do some more podcasts over the weekend. On Monday, we're going to do a live stream with Peter, and then on Tuesday we're back with me doing the solo, and we'll see what further developments there have been in the election and Ukraine and of course Lebanon. So thank you again, and we'll see you very soon. All the best. Good night. Bye bye.